This is Sai Kumar Kortiwada. In this video, we will learn about what is switch rendering in Angular and how to use that switch cases in Angular, and also how to test the switch cases in Angular. So here the switch rendering has been already discussed in my Angular tutorial video. I'll provide that link in the description. And here in this video, we will check how to test the switch cases in Angular. I strictly recommend to watch my switch cases in Angular tutorial for better understanding. Let me quickly jump into Visual Studio Code. If you see here, I have created a project with the name demo1, and it has been created by using Angular CLI, and there is a default component which was created by Angular CLI called as app component. And in this app component, I have HTML. Let me go into app.component.html. In this app.component.html, I already created some different types of switch cases, and let us see how to test them. To watch the different types of switch cases and to understand all these examples, I recommend you to watch my Angular switch case rendering tutorial video. I'll provide the link in the description, and please watch that video before continuing in this video. I recommend you to watch before watching this video. So let's try to understand what are the different cases we did on a summarized way. So here I have created an ng switch with a default value. That means no dynamic value. It is a static value, and it will be rendering with the case which it is matching. And here the matching case is this paragraph. So let me go and test this particular switch case. So for this, what I will give is I'll give an ID for the switch case. Let me expect this ID to be switch default or switch static. So here I am giving a value as a static. Let me save this and let me go to spec.ts. So in the spec.ts, let me create two variables. So what are my variables? Let fixture colon component fixture. There is a fixture called as component fixture. It will take a generic value called as app component, that is a name of a component. And let me create one component instance colon a type of app component. So this is my app component instance. Let me create that two instances for every if statement execution. So fixture equal to testbed dot, there is something called as create component, and pass the component name app component. I have created my fixture. Let me create component instance is equal to, I can get it from fixture dot component instance. So this will give the component instance. To understand more about fixture, I recommend you to watch my initial videos of this particular playlist. Let me save this, and now what I want to do is I want to test the use cases. So for this, my first test case is a static value inside the ng switch. So what I want to do, I want to test this first ng switch case, and in this let me update my fixture. So fixture dot detect changes, and when that fixture is stable, let me use a promise based, and in this promise based it will have a callback. Inside the callback, let me get the element, that is the parent element, which is a HTML div element. So div element is equal to fixture dot debug element dot native element dot query selector, which is an ID. What is my selector? Let me go and give the query selector inside this particular ID. So let me pass this and use a hash symbol because it is an ID. So let me give semicolon, and now I got the element. What is my expectation? So expectation is it has to have only one particular div, either a mobiles or clothes or chocolates or a default div. So what children of this particular parent div, it should contain only one particular div. Let me check the div states. So expect element dot child node element count. So what it will give the child element count. How many childs we have? We should have only one child, that is our div child. Let me save this and use ng test, hit enter. It will run our test cases. If you see here, the test cases has been successfully qualified. Now we are checking only the element. So what is this child element? As per our understanding, the mobiles is the child element, that is this div. So what this div should contain? It should contain one paragraph. Let me check the inner child of this particular div. So how can I check that? We have something called as expect of element dot children. So this will be an array, and what is the children count? It should be equal to 1. Again, it should be equal to 1 because it is also same like child count. Child count will be giving the value, whereas children's is an array, and I can make it an equivalent of length. So the children length should be equivalent to the number of divisions or the number of siblings which are present inside this particular parent div. For this parent div, it always displays only one particular div. So what is my expectation of length? It should be 1. Let me save this and wait until it executes. So it has been executed successfully. So I am able to find the children also. So whenever you are able to find the children, I can expect element dot children of 0. That means I'm going inside the div and I am finding the children dot length. So that should give our paragraph. So let me use 1. It should also have 1. That means the children of 0, a div, inner div. Inner div is having again one more inner HTML. That is nothing but a paragraph. So that paragraph, that means expect of element dot children of 0 dot, again I have a children of 0 dot, what is this? Let me check the tag name. The tag name should be equal to our paragraph. That means p tag. So let me save this and it should be equal to our paragraph. That is one more check we are doing. Here it is giving a problem. Why? Because expected a p to equal to of p. So what it is saying? It is saying that there is a capital and the small case issues. So tag name will always give a capital case. So what we can do is either we can convert into lowercase method and we can convert into lowercase and we can check with the paragraph, or we can use vice versa, like we can make it as a capital P. For our understanding, better to use as a small p. Why? Because always we refer tag name as a small p. And what is the expectation of inner HTML of this tag p? That means element dot children of 0. That means first div, and inside this div I have one more children that is having a first element, that is paragraph, and inside this paragraph I have something called as inner HTML. It should be equal to my mobiles. That means the switch case whatever I am passing is a mobiles, so this should be equal to this particular mobiles inner HTML. Let me pass this and save this. So we have covered all the related test cases for this particular static value. Now let me go with the second use case. So this has been completed. Let me go down. Here we are checking the dynamic content. So we have something called as a product type which is defined in our TS. Let me go to the TS, and inside the TS I have defined the product type as mobiles. So that means whenever my product type is mobiles, it has to display the same thing. And we can change this dynamic value and we can check other use cases as well. So first let me check with the product type as mobiles. So let me create one more use case. That means it statement with the product type of mobiles, that is default component product value. So this is my product value by default in the component. Let me use an arrow operator, and inside this fixture dot detect changes. So it will detect the changes, and inside this changes fixture dot when stable, whenever it is stable I want to have a callback. That callback should get the element. So let me get the element, const element colon HTML div element. Again it's a div element, and inside this div element what I want to check is I want to check the product type. So let me define the ID. ID is equal to dynamic switch case. So this is a dynamic switch case. Let me copy this, save, and fixture dot debug element dot native element dot query selector of hash symbol, and what is my ID? The ID is dynamic switch case. Let me copy this and pass here. So this will give the div element, and in the same way like previously, once we are able to get this div element, we have to find either a div and a paragraph will be existing in that particular div. So let me go to the spec file, and if you see the previous one, all the use cases would be same. So let me copy this and paste here. The only difference is it is coming from the dynamic value. So let me save this, and if you see the output, it should be equivalent to our 2 test cases. So now we have completed our 2 test cases. Now what I want to do is I want to change the product type. So let me go copy this and paste here. Let me change the product type as cloths, so which is equivalent to our cloths, and now our expectation would be something like this has to be changed to cloths. Let me copy this and paste here. So the same scenario, only the difference is it will have the element inner HTML as cloths, and here we have to define that component instance product, component instance dot product type is equal to, what is my product type? It should be equivalent to my cloths. Let me copy this and paste here, semicolon, save. So if you see here, the 3 test cases would be successfully fine. Now we have completed our 3 test cases. That means dynamic value. Now what I want to do is I want to test the default case. That means when the product type is not equivalent to any of the case, then I want to check this. So what I will do is let me copy the same test case again, copy, and here in this case let me paste here, and the product type of something which is default, that means it will not have any component value, property value. It will have some other value which is not matching. Let me give something like some value. So this is my product type, and here the expectation would be the default case. What is my default case? The default case is computers. So let me copy this computers and go to the spec file, paste this, and let me save this. So now my 4 test cases should be successfully compiled. See here, 4 has been successfully compiled. So this is how we have tested our dynamic values. What I want to check is, here we have a button. When I click this button, change to chocolates. That means by default, this button should be changing the value of my product type. Then what is my expectation? The expectation should be changed to chocolates. So this particular product type has to be changed to chocolate, and this chocolates need to be displayed. So what I can do is, let me go to the button and let me create the ID. ID is equal to button change. So there is something called as button change. So what I want to do is, let me save this HTML, go to the spec file, let me create one it statement. Inside this it statement, button click change switch case test. So this is what I want to test. When the button is clicked, I want to check the test case of a switch statement. So for example, when I click this particular one, what it is doing, let me go to the TS, and it is changing my product type to chocolates. So what is my product type? The product type is chocolates, and this has to contain this particular div element. So what this switch statement should have? It should have chocolates. So let me go to the spec file, and for this, let me use detect changes. Before detect changes and after this, fixture dot when stable dot then of callback. Inside the callback, what I want to do, I want to create a spy on function because we are using a click event. So let me create spy on button spy on. So I have created a button spy on. To create a spy on, we have a method called as spy on, and we have to give the instance. What is my instance? Component instance. And what is my spy on name? The spy on name is, go to the TS file, and we have changed to chocolates. Let me copy this and paste here. It is existing, and whenever I click on the button, it has to be called. So we are using a call through method. And now what I want to do is, I want to get the button element. So HTML button element, and this is equivalent to fixture dot debug element dot native element dot query selector of, what is my query selector of that button? My button is button change. So let me copy this ID with an hash, pass this. So what I want to do, I want to click this particular element now. So what I can do is button element dot click event. I am calling the click event. Now let me check the elements. So const element, what is my element is switch element. Let me use switch element colon HTML div element is equal to fixture dot debug element dot native element dot query selector of, what is my query selector of that parent one? I have something called as dynamic switch. So this will be equivalent to dynamic switch, and all the remaining statements would be same, but the value would be changed as per the previous test case. Let me go to the previous test case and call all these expectations. Let me paste here below this particular element. So what I can do is, instead of using switch element, I'll change this to element. So my element is HTML element, and what is my expectation? Whenever I click this particular element, so what it has to call? It has to call this button spy on, and this button spy on should call the product type equal to chocolates. So what I can check is, I can check 2 things. One is child elements, and it should be equivalent to the paragraph, but the paragraph should contain chocolates. Let me copy this chocolates and pass here, and also we have to expect something called as button spy on. How many times that button spy on has been called? Button spy on dot to have been called times of 1. It should be called 1 time. Let me save this, and mobiles to equal of chocolates. That means it is trying to click the event, but my data is not updating. Why? Because I have used the click event. After the click event, I am not updating the values. So after clicking, what I want to do is, I want to update my fixture because the value has been changed. So let me update the fixture again. Detect changes, and inside this detect changes, let me use fixture dot when stable. Again, when it is stable, I want to check the condition. So let me go to the then statement, and inside the callback, let me go to the callback, and inside this callback, I want to get the element and I want to check all these pions, including, let me save this and go to the console, check this, it is successfully compiled. What the problem here is, whenever you click something, it is updating our TS file. Whenever the TS file is updated, we have to use detect changes and when stable. So that will give the proper and expected output. So that is how we have tested our dynamic content and also button click change. So now what I want to test is, I want to test this ng switch case based on the method. So what I want to do, I want to create one ID. ID is equal to switch with method. So we are using a method with switch. Let me copy this and save here. Go to the spec file. Let me create one it statement. What is this it statement should do? It should check method name switch. So let me have a callback. Inside this callback, let me update the fixture dot detect changes, and inside the detect changes, fixture dot when stable. Whenever the UI is stable, I want to have a promise. Inside the promise, I have a callback. Inside the callback, let me check const element colon HTML. It's a div element. Div element is equal to fixture dot debug element dot native elements dot query selector of, what is my query selector here? The method name, switch with method. Let me copy this and use a hash. After this hash, I got the element. What is my expectation now? Whenever this element is equivalent to the method, whatever the get product type is returning. What is this get product type is returning? The product type is returned by using this dot product type. That means it is returning our mobiles. Let me check that mobiles. So how can I check it? I have already the element, the same thing. Let me copy the same thing and here paste, and let me remove this pion. So what it should be equal to? It should be equal to mobile. Let me save this, and if you see the test cases, it will be successfully compiled. That means 6 cases has been successfully compiled. So in the same way, method name can be updated even with the product type. So when product type is changed, so whenever I change the product type, consider the product type as component instance dot product type is equal to, what I want to pass? I want to pass something which is related to cloths. So let me pass the cloths and pass here. It is matching with the cloths. What is my expectation of that paragraph? I should get this cloths. Let me copy this cloths and pass here and save this. Now I have changed the product type. When I change the product type, even at that particular time, I can get the expected value because this particular stable changes has been done. So now switch with method. So what we can do is, the another thing is ng container. For ng container, we cannot use the IDs. So I cannot use the IDs now. What we can check is, directly we can define some IDs for the paragraph. So let me create some IDs for the paragraph. ID is equal to mobile case. This is one ID, and let me copy this ID and pass to the other one, like cloths. I have passed it to cloths, and I have passed it to chocolates. I have passed it to, change it to computers case. That means default case, and also here we can use chocolate case, and here we can use cloth case. So let me save this, and in this container, what I want to do, I want to get this particular ID. What it is returning? It is returning the get product type. What is my get product type? Get product type will return the product type. By default, it is having mobile. See, what I should expect? I should expect this particular element should be in the DOM. So let me go to the spec file, and here let me create one it statement, it of check switch with container. So I want to check with the container. Inside the container, I have a callback. Let me use fixture dot debug element or detect changes. Inside the detect changes, fixture dot when stable. Whenever it is stable, I have a callback that is a promise based, and inside this I have a callback. Inside the callback, let me get the element colon. What is my element? It should be a paragraph element that is equivalent to mobile case. So by default, I should have a mobile case. So HTML paragraph element is equal to fixture dot debug element dot native element dot query selector of, what is my ID? The ID is mobile case, and it is having a hash semicolon, and my element has been triggered. So what is my expectation? Expectation is element dot, what is my element? It is having an inner HTML dot to equal of, what is my equivalent text? The equivalent text should be something related to mobiles. So let me copy this mobiles and paste here, save this. Now switch case with ng container will also be working as expected. So 8 test cases has been successfully qualified. Now what I want to do is I want to check the same thing with container itself by changing the product name, by changing the product type. So what is my product type? Let me change that product type. Component instance dot product type is equal to, what I want to pass is I want to pass the other ID, that means equal to cloths. Let me pass the cloths, and this should be equal to the inner HTML of this cloths. Let me pass the cloths here. And what is the ID? The ID should be equal to cloth case. So let me go and change the ID to cloth case, and let me save this. Now product type is cloths. The return type of the particular method will be cloths, and that will be equal to your cloths, and 9 test cases has been successfully passed. And now what I want to check is I want to check the same thing by using default case. That means by changing the product type with non-existence. It should not be existing in my cases. So some value that should be equivalent to my default case. What is my default case? The ID is default case. Let me pass the default case to my ID, and the inner HTML would be equal to computers. Let me copy this and paste here. It should be equal to computers. Let me save this, and all the test cases would be successfully compiled. Here if you see, the 10 test cases has been compiled successfully. This is how we will be testing our ng switch and switch cases rendering in Angular. Hope you guys like my video. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Thank you. Signing off.